Quest for Dawn, written by C.S. Belle, narrated using Google AI Studio. Chapter 1: The Final Battle. Dawn was breaking. The final battle was over. The companions all stood on the docks, with the new dawn creeping over the horizon. They survived, and they had won. The parasitic tadpoles withered and died. They were free from the threat of mind flayers, free from any horrid mind control that could have befallen them from turning into monstrous illithids. Free. Words of praise were given, lauding Tav for leading them to victory. The high elf woman stood, her blue-black tendrils of hair flowing in the morning sea breeze. With tenacity, magic, and kindness in her heart, Tavriel had brought them all together and helped them, loved them. Celebrations were discussed, and Tav fervently agreed. Perhaps the Elf Song Tavern still stood, despite the destruction.
I really don't care what we do so long as... Ow!
Astarion's usual irreverent air turned to panic as he felt his hands begin to smoke and sizzle. The dawning of the sun had begun to burn him once more.
Oh gods! Oh no!
Astarion's vision blurred with tears as he glanced at his friends.
Well, it was nice while it lasted. I'm sorry. I have to go.
Before another moment could pass, he ran, slipping and stumbling until he disappeared behind the tallest wall of crates he could find.
Astarion!
Tavriel called after him, but he was already gone. Her heart ached as she watched him run from a thing he had treasured and delighted in throughout their adventure. Having survived the battle, something as simple as the sunrise could now end her love's life and her heart. After the other companions had said their goodbyes, Tav lingered to bid them farewell, making sure they would be all right without her, as she always did. Then she left and followed Astarion's path. She found him huddled in a shadowed corner of the dock, shielded by a tall stack of crates, his head buried in his drawn-up knees.
Astarion?
Tav's voice was thick with worry. Without a second thought, she knelt beside him and embraced his trembling shoulders. He was weeping.
You're safe, Astarion. Safe with me.
Her words were meant to comfort him, but they only made him feel worse. He should never have had to depend on someone else for his safety, and the thought of it disgusted him, even if it was Tav, especially if it was Tav. He sat there for a moment, frozen in time, feeling weak, afraid, pathetic. Then, slowly, he raised his arms and wrapped them around her, his fingers gripping the fabric of her tunic as if it were a lifeline.
I'll never be safe in the daylight again.
It was as if saying it confirmed the ugly truth. How could she possibly still love someone like this? She deserved better. But his heart hoped, selfishly, that she never came to know this. Maybe she deserved better. But he didn't want anyone else. Not for her, not for him. For who could ever truly love a vampire spawn, a monster, but Tavriel? Gale, the acclaimed wizard of Waterdeep with a most insatiable curiosity, poked his head around the stack of crates. Having considered and ultimately rejected retrieving the crown of Karsus from the Chionthar River, thanks to Tav's persuasion, he likely became newly intrigued by their vampire friend.
Safe from the scorching rays of dawn, then?
Astarion's silver head was ducked down, buried into Tav's shoulder. His jaw clenched, a red haze consumed his vision, fueled by the thought of anyone witnessing this weakness.
Tavriel shot Gale with a loaded glare, however.
Not now, Gale.
I meant no offense.
Gale replied, though the corner of his mouth twitched, clearly aware that his timing was less than impeccable.
Sunlight is notoriously indifferent to personal struggles, be it for mages or vampire spawn.
Astarion finally lifted his head, his face twisted in a mixture of annoyance and embarrassment. The redness of his eyes betrayed the emotions he had just tried to hide. As fond as I am of unsolicited facts, I was already aware of that one, thank you. But if you're going to be here, could you be indifferent in a manner that's actually useful? Perhaps conjure a portal to somewhere, oh, I don't know, a little less deadly for a vampire?
Gale's eyes met Astarion's, a brief moment of understanding flashing between them.
Ah, touché. I do have a habit of waxing poetic at the most inconvenient times.
His hand began to move in the air, tracing a shimmering outline.
A portal it is. Any preferences? The Underdark? A cozy crypt in Waterdeep?
Our room at the Elf Song, Gale, if you would be so kind.
The wizard showed the slightest bit of deference to her by bowing his head.
The Elf Song it is, if it still stands after all that's happened.
His deft hands swirled in the air, reaching out to the weave and plucking purple strands of energy in a complex pattern. Tavriel watched him with only the slightest bit of envy. Sorcerers were innate in their magic, and while she could cast a great many spells, wizards had an entire repository of the arcane at their disposal. Gale made it look effortless, and conjured a glowing circular rift in time and space. Safety for Astarion was just beyond the glowing boundary.
The room on the other side looked thankfully intact, and as Gale looked, he hummed his approval.
Excellent. Everything seems in order and no worse for wear. We'll come find you both later.
Astarion restrained a growl, glaring at Gale and not so much as giving him thanks for the request fulfilled. He quickly stepped through. Tav was right behind him. Gale smiled and glanced at Tavriel as they passed through the portal. His expression was a mix of relief, envy, and respect. She gave him a small nod of gratitude before following Astarion into the portal. It shimmered once more and closed, leaving Gale alone in the shadow of the crates. With a sigh and a rueful shake of his head, Gale turned and went to rejoin the others.
Safe within their room at the Elf Song Tavern, Tavriel and Astarion felt the sense of familiarity wash over them in a comforting wave. Fatigue set in quickly, and with little energy left to even try to mask it, Astarion simply pulled the small elf woman into an embrace that spoke of endless gratitude and longing. His head ducked down to her shoulder, letting out a tenuous breath.
Thank you.
The embrace was returned, but Tav quipped softly, "That's funny."
What is?
She leaned back slightly to study his face, a pale face of haunting beauty, and gave a small smile. "I didn't have to pull it out of you this time." The gentle teasing stemmed from the recollection of his pout after being instructed to express gratitude following their battle and victory over the Orthan in Shah's temple. He had made it sound forced then, like a child being told what to say when we kill their enemies for them.
Thank you for helping me. It was very kind.
Every word of it jilted and half-hearted, but this time he meant it. Astarion's eyes met hers, and for a moment the weight of everything they'd been through seemed to lift. A small, genuine smile crept onto his face, one that he allowed only in the rarest of moments and for the rarest of people.
What can I say, my love? You bring out the best in me.
Tavriel enjoyed the company of friends in the tavern downstairs, drinking and celebrating with them all. Lae'zel had left them on the docks, proudly riding the fearsome dragon off to the astral realms from whence she came. Will and Karlach too had gone, to Avernus, in an effort to save Karlach's life before her infernal engine had consumed her. They belonged together, thought Tav, her heart glad for them that they had each other. Then there were the druids. Halsin, the bear of an elf with the strongest arms and even more impressive stature, and Jaheira, the wild half-elven harper, though reaching into her venerable years, still had the spirit of youth burning within her. And then there was Minsk, the gentle giant of a ranger, with more brawn than brains, but lovable in his haplessness. The ranger from Rashomon cradled his tiny, furry companion, the curious little hamster he affectionately called Boo. A miniature giant space hamster? Tav laughed into her wineglass at the thought, watching them all with mirth and relief. By some miracle and through the strength of their companionship, they not only survived, they had won. The heroes of Baldur's Gate. Tav was sure that it might go to Gel's head, but then he too had changed. Perhaps they all had become better people after all that had occurred, all they had endured. But someone was missing from their little party downstairs in the tavern. Her heart felt a small twinge for the one she had come to know as a tortured soul, the one who had held a knife to her throat when they first met, who was frustratingly irreverent and yet seemed to care when it mattered, who had vexed her until she found herself in love with him. She had left Astarion upstairs in their rented rooms, giving him the space he may have needed while the light of day flooded through windows. They had to be shuttered now, and the look Astarion had on his face was one tinged with longing. The memory of him basking in the sun during their adventures, marveling at the colors of the day that could not be enjoyed under the blue-white light of the moon, all of it was gone for him now.
Leaving her companions to their laughter and conversations, Tav quietly disappeared from the gathering, heading upstairs. The door to their room opened, and she found Astarion sitting by the fire, alone with a glass of wine beside him. It was nearly sunset, but he hadn't thought to come down to join them in their celebration. Perhaps not yet, she figured. But then looking at him, maybe it hadn't crossed his mind, and there were other things to consider that were more important. She touched his shoulder and sat beside him on the lounge in front of the fire.
Hello, darling. I was just thinking about freedom. How I'm free of the parasite. Free of Khazad-dûr. How I'll never be in someone's power again.
There was conviction in his words, a self-assuredness that had developed over the several 10-day they had spent on the road. Through cursed lands, many battles, and too many close calls to count, Astarion had changed. Not in personality, which Tav always found inexplicably endearing, but certainly in countenance. Then he huffed out a humorless laugh.
And all it cost was my life in the sun.
Astarion looked down, letting out a grim chuckle. His next words were dark, pensive.
Now I belong to the shadows.
Tav watched him change his mood, like a skilled mummer changing masks during a play. That irreverence returned.
So, what happens next?
Tav could see the hesitant smile on his face, bordering on a smirk, but beyond the mask, she saw his wariness and doubt. He truly didn't know the answer, and was asking her. Without fully thinking it through, she replied in earnest,
I'll help you walk in the sun again." Astarion was stunned, the mask falling away in an instant.
Do you think it's possible?
There were thoughts swirling in his mind, Tav knew. Within the span of a hummingbird's heartbeat, Astarion considered everything they had been through together up to that point.
I suppose there's a chance, he said to himself, but brought his eyes back to meet hers. And if there's a chance, no matter how small, I'm going to take it.
Tavriel studied him silently with her iridescent eyes, silvery blue like moonlight. How he loved to look into those eyes, allowing himself a true smile at last. He couldn't help himself when he continued.
And it would mean setting off on another adventure together.
That little laugh of his made Tav smile gently, a breathy laugh laden with insecurity. It stirred her heart before his next words nearly broke it.
Is that what you want? Is this what you want?
How could he ask such a thing? Tav thought to herself. But of course there was doubt. Always he doubted the friendship of others, the kindness of others. No one ever looked out for me. No one ever said a kind thing to me, he had said to her. You're the only one. The memory of those words still stung, and her hand found itself searching for his. Slender fingers grasped hers like a lifeline.
I would understand if you wanted to go your own way,
said Astarion, despite himself, despite his cool fingers feeling the warmth of her hand. The tone of his voice carried melancholy, and dare she say hope?
No, this is what I want, Tav told him, sliding closer to him, touching his face. Astarion practically melted into her hand with a deep sigh of relief.
Good.
He relented, content.
Because, selfless as I am, I really did not want to let you go.
With his assurance reclaimed, he continued emphatically.
We are rather excellent together, you know. And united, there is nothing we can't do. I can't say what the future holds for us, but I know we'll be facing it together.
He closed the distance between them and took Tavriel in his arms, pushing back a strand of her blue-black hair from her face.
And we're going to have a lot of fun.
The kiss he gave her was tender, his lips so soft against hers. Her hand reached up to his hair, cradling the back of his head and eliciting a contented sound from him. It was a long kiss, but she returned it with as much tenderness as she held in her heart for him, a boundless ocean in a sea of stars.
Moonlit grove where shadows dance with grace, a serenade resounds from a lute's tender embrace. Through the veil of night, a love story unfolds of two souls entwined in a tale that never grows old.